Hello, and welcome to Insightful Conversations with your host, 3 Principles practitioner, Adey-Jones. Join her each week as she welcomes some of the world's leading 3 Principles teachers and practitioners who share how this understanding has dramatically improved the quality of their lives and the lives of those they work with.
I'm thrilled to have Nicole Barton with me today. Nicole is a life mentor and something of a unicorn within the self-help industry for her candid notion that nobody needs self-help. Nicole is committed to supporting people in finding freedom from whatever their particular form of suffering is. She's a breath of fresh air in her admission that, while playing in anything such as yoga and meditation shifts us from our heads into our hearts, none of these practices are prerequisites to finding peace. Nicole supports people to embody their own wisdom through embracing self-rediscovery via her online summits, group programs, one-on-ones, and events and retreats. She is also working on her first book. Visit her at www.nicolebarton.co.uk. Welcome, Nicole. I'm so excited that we actually get to do this. We've been talking about it for a few months now, so I'm so glad you're joining us today.
I know. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Wonderful. Well, I'd love to start. I'd love to have you give us a little bit of a background to what your life was like before you came across the principles. So I know you had an interesting journey. So if you could share that with us and our audience.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, I think prior to the principles, it was a really kind of, I don't know, I guess at the time I spent much of my life kind of feeling quite lost and broken and almost as if I was damaged. When I was 4, it was actually my first day of school and my dad left the family home, never to kind of really return. And so I think I created quite a lot of meaning from that through my childhood and into my kind of early adult life, really. And so I'd always felt like I wasn't enough somehow. And that left me feeling like I had to search really hard for, I don't know, for being more, to just be more. So I felt quite lost and quite broken at times. And I suffered with things like eating disorders and, anxiety, depression, through most of my kind of teenage years as well. And I actually burnt out with chronic fatigue twice in my life. So I was age 10 and I wasn't able to walk. So I was in a wheelchair for about a year and I missed a year of school. And I think it was just really down to kind of, obviously now I kind of look back and it makes a bit more sense, but this kind of idea that I was always striving to be more. My kind of life prior to the principles was kind of one, I've often termed it as kind of suffering almost. That kind of feels a bit heavy at times, but now I very much see it a lot differently. And it feels like it kind of took a journey of self-rediscovery, but I call it that because I also kind of dived into self-help and later had some insights about that, which transformed my life. And that was when I came across the principles, really.
Yeah. So I was listening to your interview with Jackie Ford and, I couldn't help but relate. I grew up without a father and he only lived a little bit down the road and literally like 3 miles down the road. Yeah. And never sort of acknowledged us. And I found myself doing the same sort of thing. I made that mean something about me.
Yeah.
And also grew up feeling very broken and not good enough and all of that stuff. So I can completely relate to that, the journey that you were on. Yeah, I'm fascinated. So chronic fatigue at such a young age, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's usually directly related to stress, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there was, now looking back, there was kind of a lot of thinking going on, I guess, and that is just exhausting. So that's what I came to see, was that I was kind of always living in my head and really not trusting how life worked. I felt like I needed to be more and be better. And so I guess, when you're in that kind of point of view, because that's what you think then it kind of looks that way. And I guess you just strive really hard, and eventually it leads to your body saying, no, I've kind of had enough of that now. I can't, I can't keep on with this pace. And that's very much how it feels to me now. It's almost like this wisdom kicked in at some point to say, no, slow down. Like even the not being able to walk now really looks to me like, I just had to stop and see something different, really.
Yeah. And it's a weird question to ask, I suppose, but did you see anything at such a young age? Did you see something then, or was it after many years on the path of, self-improvement, this workshop, that workshop, wherever it took you?
Yeah, I think much of my insight now really has come from looking back and seeing the time. I think at the age of 10, I don't really remember what I saw about that. I remember still feeling quite broken and damaged by all of that, really, at that age. But when I was 23, and I did actually have natural therapies which helped me, so homeopathy and things like that, which I guess kind of, still kind of point you back to to who you are, but I didn't really see that at that age. And I guess when I think I was about 23 or 24, I got ill with chronic fatigue again, and for a second time wasn't able to walk and actually lost my job as well. So I think it was then really that I became a bit more aware of potentially there was something that needed to be heard, I guess. And for most of my life, I haven't really heard myself. I've just kind of been busy hearing everybody else and thinking about what they wanted me to be like.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I can relate to that one too. It's like looking through a mirror here. So tell me some of the things that led you to eventually coming across the principles, and what it was that you saw that was so different when you did come across the principles as opposed to all the other modalities that you tried before that.
Yeah, I kind of explored everything, actually. It was a bit of a crazy few years where I just went on this journey from kind of studying Reiki at Stonehenge to kind of meditation and yoga in Bali. So I literally scoured the globe for who I was without really much success until I came across the principles and suddenly saw that search in a completely different way, because I think I felt with self-help that there was something that needed to be fixed. And when I came across the principles, that just became so apparent that it was the opposite. It was like, no, we don't need fixing because we're not broken in the first place. And there's this kind of natural intelligence behind life that's living us all of the time. And the only reason that we aren't really tuned into that is because we're not aware of it, and because we're kind of living in our heads, which is kind of what I've been doing for most of my life. So it was that I heard, really. I think it was, just really seeing quite clearly that everything that I'd been looking for was kind of already within me, and I was being lived by this natural intelligence. And that was quite profound, because it was like the complete opposite of what I'd been looking for. I kind of searched everywhere in the world for for who I was, when I realized actually who we are is wisdom. And that's why I kind of call it Self Rediscovery, because it was like my eyes had opened to see that, we are already, everything we are seeking is already within us, and it's just rediscovering that. And through seeing, the missing link of thought and how that works and how that creates our experience. So that was quite profound and quite special. And it just kind of dropped me out of, popped this little bubble that I was living in. Yeah.
You and the rest of the world, me included.
Yeah.
It's truly amazing it's not like Sid says anything completely new, but he said it in a way, in the simplicity that I think so many of us were able to hear it. I mean, I've been on my spiritual path for, close to 40 years and almost 30 years of therapy. You hear all these things all the time. It's the answers within and blah, blah. It just eludes you, And then you come across this and it's like, oh, oh, now I get it.
I know. I had the exact same thing, actually. I remember being in Bali and hearing, I think it was a Rumi quote, everything you need is within you already. And I was like, oh, well, that kind of makes sense. And kind of, but not really, like I didn't feel it.
I know exactly. That's the difference, is the feeling it. Yeah, I've been in every modality ever, the Kabbalah, with Sikhs, with Hindus, with Native American, just everything. And it's always the same message. Yeah. But it just landed in a different way with the principles. As you said, it sort of was out of here and I just felt it. I actually felt it. And until you really feel it, it's just more thinking.
Yeah. Although often kind of becomes a destination then. It's like, well, we want to feel it now. So and it almost has the same effect. Like we're then searching for how we can feel the three principles, whereas it's kind of just an understanding that explains how life works. It's not necessarily something we need to get, which was also quite, liberating. It was like, oh, this just explains it all.
Exactly.
There's nothing to do.
No, and there's nothing to learn because, as it points out, it's already happening whether we know about it or not. Yeah. It just shines the spotlight on it. So it's wonderful. So I know that you are pregnant right now, and is this your first baby?
It is, yeah.
It is. Yeah. Oh my God, it's such a magical time. I loved being pregnant. Growing up, I loved it. But so I just think that that's a time in your life where things just pop. You see things in different ways. So what are you seeing more and more deeply since you've been pregnant?
Yeah, it's amazing actually, because I think, and again, this is why I kind of call it a journey of self-rediscovery, because where before it felt like a need to discover something or a need to fix something, it now feels like a choice, and it's something that I enjoy. Kind of what am I going to see, in this? And not that I even really asked myself that question; it kind of just happens. but with pregnancy, it was like all of a sudden it was the purest visibility of wisdom in action that I'd ever had. And it's I just remember, because it's obviously with the coronavirus and everything going on at the moment, a lot of people have been very much in their heads, and at times we all are, because we're human and that's how life works. But I just remember kind of thinking, there are just cells kind of intelligently collecting themselves literally within me without me doing anything. And it just was a real reminder that, wisdom is literally living us all of the time without us having to do anything. And it just, when I kind of thought that, I was writing an article actually about pregnancy and COVID, and it just, really kind of was like, oh, it's such a beautiful kind of felt experience of wisdom in action. That's
so great. And it really is. It's like my newsletter this week was about the same thing, about the illusion of control and I think especially around pregnancy, we get very sort of, without this understanding, I certainly got very precious about how I thought it should go, how it should look. And I'm sure you too did not imagine for a second that you would be spending, most of your pregnancy in lockdown and going through what we're going through. So
it's amazing, because I think beforehand, without knowledge of how life works and how the mind works and all of this sort of thing, I think I would have had a totally different experience, because I was quite anxious, and that would have looked terrible to me. But actually I find myself kind of just constantly dropped back into that kind of wisdom, and it's a really different experience to what I know I would have had, or what I think I would have had before, because we don't know, right?
No, exactly. But you're right. I mean, I'm hearing you, and I think, yes, it does. I mean, I think with this understanding, we can sort of more gracefully, I love George's Pransky's thing. It's like, what is it? Sort of, we're grateful for the highs and graceful with the lows.
That's gorgeous.
It really is. And just, it is such an awe-inspiring moment. And what a terrible shame it would be to be up in our heads resisting what is, when you could just be bathing in that magic of what you said, which is, what's the intelligence behind life is creating within you without your input. Well, maybe a little bit of input in the beginning. But.
But it's just a reminder of what a miracle life is as well. And I think the more we can look towards that and see that that's who we are, is kind of, that's what settles me, I think. And I kind of talk about self-rediscovery now. I talk about it as kind of this kind of almost it's like it offers you this foundational grounding in who we are. And that feels very kind of settling to me. It's like, no, peace is our nature, wisdom is our nature. That is our very essence. And so it feels like that's a great place now to kind of settle out of my head. And it's just a reminder, really. It's this kind of, beautiful feeling.
We're back to the feeling that we be looking for. Does happen naturally.
Yeah.
So tell me a bit about, I know you were doing the Self-Discovery Summit. Now, is that still happening? Tell me about where that...
Yeah, and again, so I started that in January, and it's kind of evolved. So I just was initially going to do it for 3 months, and it was just kind of interviewing different people about their experience of their own kind of self-discoveries. And it started off being about kind of finding freedom from, all of the different things that we want to find freedom from, with all the things that we kind of suffer with. And it's kind of just evolved from there, really. And it's been really beautiful interviewing different speakers. So we've had people like Michael Neal and Amy Johnson and Dicken Bettinger and, all sorts of wonderful people sharing their wisdom with us and sharing, really who we are. Because the whole point of the summit was to point people towards, who we really are beyond our thinking about who we are. And I think people often come to that journey, much like I did, in a kind of outside-in way, thinking that when we're starting a journey of self-rediscovery, we need to fix or change something in the external. Whereas actually, we can play in that, and that can be fun. But it's more about seeing who we are beyond that. In our wisdom, really. For me, wisdom makes sense as a label for kind of this natural intelligence of life. So that's what it's been doing. But now I've extended it because it's just been so much fun. But yeah, I've just kept it going. And so we interview different speakers each Friday, and it's live, and people get to ask questions, and we're kind of just exploring lots of different topics and lots of different ways of pointing people home to wisdom and who we really are. Yeah,
that's wonderful. And I know it's now you also have this Self-Discovery Unravelled program. Is that different, or is that the same as?
Yeah, so as part of that, I've launched the Self Rediscovery School. And there's 2 programs in that. So the first one is Self Rediscovery Foundations, and that's kind of what I was talking about. It felt important to me to help people find this settled space within us, I guess, this kind of the peace and kind of that freedom from suffering and seeing that that's not who we are, and rediscovering more broadly who we are. So that feels to me very much like a kind of foundational grounding that brings us back to back home, really. But then from there, I've had a lot of insight about over the years as well, about how we're kind of also able to play in our humanness, because I think you kind of, once you get that sense of we're peace and that's it's wonderful and it feels great, but there's also like, well, we can still create and play in whatever who we do want to be in our human form. And actually it was lovely because Dicken Bettinger came on the summit last week, or I think it was last week, and he was the week before, he was talking about how we're formless dancing as form. And that kind of speaks to me of this kind of like, well, we can dance as however we want to dance in our humanness. So that's kind of what the Unravel program is about. It's about kind of, kind of playing in our humanness, because I think there's a fun element to that as well. And I remember Dominic Scafidi also talking about kind of we're always co-creating between divine wisdom and our human desire. So that's kind of almost summing up what Unravel is about. It's like, well, we can get this foundational grounding in, realizing we're peace and we've got everything we need within us. But Unravel's then also about kind of playing with that, having a little bit more fun.
I love what you're pointing to, because I'm a very sort of I love my humanness.
Yeah.
And I love other people's mess. And, on so many spiritual paths where there was this sort of spiritual bypass, or this sort of, and a lot too now in the conversation around non-duality, there's this sort of almost of an abandonment of the human part of ourselves. And I'm very much like, no, I love the human part of ourselves. I spent so many years, finding fault with it and trying to fix it. It's like, no, let me embrace it. I don't want it to not be there. And I think it's just the relationship you have with that. And I was listening to Dick, and a couple of weeks ago, he was part of the school I'm into, and he was speaking for the weekend. And, that description that I use the 1% and the 99% because that's what we learned in Kabbalah. But Dickon was saying it's 4% human, 96%, the spiritual nature of who we are at our essence. But it really is not to abandon that beautiful human part of ourselves and the lovely quirkiness and the expression of who we are,
Yeah, it's such a gift. And I think, like you say, very much my experience was I kind of came across this spiritual bypassing, and it's like, oh no, we don't want to, want to evade the human experience. And it's like, no, we want to, let's embrace it. We only get one chance to do that. Exactly. Well, maybe not, who knows, but
I'm into a few chances myself. Still, why we've got this one in this body, in this form, I want to enjoy what that one brings. And it's like a paint box. It's like, go in there, get muddy, get silly, and use all the different colors you can that's available to you. I often
And I also love Jeff Foster, because he talks about kind of the messier side of being human as well. And he has taught me a lot, I think, because for me, when I first came across the principles, I was kind of like, oh, it's just a thought, it doesn't matter. Kind of then also for me became a bit of a misunderstanding, because then I realized, well, no, actually, it's just an explanation for how our feelings arrive. And I know Jeff Foster, I remember him saying feelings arise to be held, not healed. And I love that, because it's like, oh yeah, they just kind of come up to be visible and show us something new. And that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I love that. I remember having an experience once where I was in Peru, and I just, it just sort of came to me that we would never have been created to have the capacity and the range of feelings we had if any of them were bad.
Yeah.
I truly believe we are meant to feel every single emotion that we're capable of feeling, whether it's, the ones that we often push in the shadow, like greed, anger, jealousy. But no, they're part of our humanity. They're part of what makes us so, unique and expressive. I mean, we just don't let them run the show.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with having them.
Yeah, I know. And I think, again, Sid kind of points to that, Sid Banks, and he says, we don't need to be afraid of the human experience. And that would just change the world if everybody realised that. And I think that was a big insight for me. It was like, oh, these are all fine. We're just making meaning all of the time. And that can be fun sometimes. And sometimes it can feel a bit rocky, but it's all welcome.
Exactly. And that's the other thing I love about the principles, is that I think some people feel that we're going to become sort of a little robotic and a bit sort of non-feeling because we're dismissing everything as thought. And I found the opposite. I feel that I feel things more deeply and more profoundly because I'm not in judgment of I shouldn't be feeling that. I should, it's just flowing. It's energy flowing through me. So it's
I can't remember who said it, but someone described emotions as energy in motion, and I love that. Mm-hmm. It's like, that makes quite a lot of sense, and it's just real deeper acceptance of all of it is what I've kind of come to through the principles as well. It's kind of beautiful, because I think a lot of the time before I just lived in fear. When I was anxious, I was kind of always anxious about being anxious. That just made it a lot more thinking.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the classic anxiety attack. It's like, oh no, I'm anxious, I can have an anxiety attack. And the more focus we put on it, the more energy goes there. And that happens. So that's beautiful. I love how you speak about them. I love how you share them. You have a coaching school too. Is that correct? Now, do you teach other coaches, or you?
No, so at the moment it's just the Self Rediscovery School, which is for kind of people who are looking to find freedom and unravel a life they love, is how I kind of sum it up, and basically embrace that kind of self rediscovery journey that I'm kind of talking about, and we're all kind of pointing to, really. And then I work with people one-to-one as well, which is always nice for people who kind of don't necessarily want that group sharing, which, you know, everybody's different and there's kind of benefits to both. But
yeah, I find that too, definitely.
Yeah.
So what would you like to leave our listeners with?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm now like, ooh, what's the most important thing? I think for me, what I've been seeing recently is just the ability that we have to kind of dance between humanness and wisdom, and that co-creation between divine wisdom and our human desire. And that's what I've kind of been playing with, because I find that the more that we spend in that space, the more fun life is, and the more actually, I guess we're always judging success, but you know, life feels a lot more fun and a lot more in flow when we're living like that. So yeah, just continually discovering new insights and things like that, but from a place of choice rather than a place of need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love sort of letting go of my intellect. I know not to trust that. I love sitting in that place of just sort of, as you said, discovery. Just like, you know, when you're so sort of out of your head and you feel this wisdom pop up, and you're like, oh my God, where did that one come from? I could never have thought that one up myself. It's such a magical place to come from.
It really is, yeah. No, it's beautiful. And the more that we just kind of spend looking, for me, the more we spend looking towards wisdom, is kind of where we kind of feel it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very special.
No. I know, we all walk around with these big grins on our faces.
I know, and it's kind of why I did the summit, because every week I'm like, oh, this is fun.
Yeah, I know, exactly. That's why I do the show every week. I get to speak to wonderful, magical people like you.
Yeah, it's so nice, isn't it? It's and it's lovely to chat to you as well. Yeah,
and you too. Well, good luck with the rest of your pregnancy. Do you know what you're having?
Yes, it's a little girl.
Oh, do we have a name?
Not yet. No. Oh. Some ideas, but yeah. We'll see.
I can't wait to hear about it when you give birth. So, the rest of everything, and it's been lovely chatting to you.
Thank you, and thank you so much for inviting me on as well. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. If you're interested in learning more about my coaching and mentoring packages, please reach out to me at Adey-Jones@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you.